So I bought an iPhone 14 Pro Max, and it's literally been over 10 years since I've actually owned one. The last one I owned was a 3GS. So it has been a pretty long time since I've used an iPhone, and I'm actually excited to see how much has changed. And it's not like I never used an iPhone before. I've used some of my family members' iPhones. I've seen them upgrade through the different years, and I've messed around with them a couple times, but I never really actually owned one for over 10 years as my personal phone or my daily driver. And it's not like I don't really like my Galaxy S22 Ultra. I think it is a fantastic phone, except for the battery. The only thing that I really had a problem with was just it getting stale. I kind of got tired of using Android for this period of time, and I kind of just wanted to try something different. And I thought it was fitting that I switched to an iPhone this year, especially considering the fact that they changed a couple things from maybe the 2 or 3 previous models, specifically being the dynamic island. I also thought it would be a pretty good idea to change, especially considering the fact that I own an iMac now, and it's a lot easier to transfer files from my phone to my computer. I do a lot of the work on this YouTube channel with my phone camera, and I tend to always run into issues with my Galaxy S22 Ultra not being able to connect through Android file transfer. Because if you own an iMac and you have an Android device, you kind of can't just connect the phone to the computer. You have to use a specific set of software, one particularly like Commander 1 or something like Android file transfer. And Android file transfer only works when it wants to work. So it's been a pretty refreshing experience to not have to fiddle around with my cords and plug things in and then things having not to work, when I can just tap one button and airdrop my files for my videos from my phone to my computer. So with that out of the way, let's get into some of the thoughts I had on the iPhone 14 Pro Max as I've been using it over these past few days. And it's not going to be too many because I'm going to have a in-depth video review of it later on, but I kind of just want to go over a little bit of the surface. So let's get into it. Speaking of the design of the 14 Pro Max, it's actually much nicer than I thought it was in person compared to my S22 Ultra. I'm liking it just a little bit better. The heaviness is actually what makes it feel a bit more premium. I decided to pick up the deep purple because I'm always getting black or silver, so I figured new phone, new color, and it actually looks pretty great. Everything's pretty much stayed the same here on the 14 like it did for the 13. The only main aspects that changed is the new chip with the A16 and the addition of the 48 megapixel sensor. It still has the same OLED display that was on the 13 Pro Max. The only difference is the most obvious change to the top of the phone with the new pill-shaped dynamic island and the addition of the always-on display. I will say, the removal of the SIM card tray is a bit of a letdown. The only thing I think this does is remove options for people in general, and that to me is never a good thing. Using the eSIM is convenient for some people, but not for others, and I feel like this was just a weird choice, especially for people that travel a lot to other countries. With the addition of iOS 16 on the 14 Pro Max, it's been a pretty good experience and a nice change of pace from my Galaxy. Everything in the settings is listed out in a much more concise manner, and I don't really have to dive through menus to know exactly what I'm looking for. Things feel fast and fluid, much more so than my Galaxy it seems, especially when swiping through menus and switching between apps. But that could be because of Apple's animation work, which is actually very, very good. Most of the voice commands that I use on my S22 Ultra using the Google Assistant works just as well as using Siri on the iPhone. There are some hit and misses here and there, but for the most part, it works just as much as or as well as I expected it to. It sometimes has trouble referencing maybe a few commands, and sometimes it will revert to search, but other than that, commands like making phone calls, writing up some text messages, starting a timer, they all work just as well as you'd expect them to, and I don't really feel like I'm going to have trouble transitioning over from the Assistant to Siri at all. The lock screen customization is an add-on I was waiting for iPhones to finally get, instead of just swapping pictures around, and it's finally here. There's some clock styles there, but you can tell it's a bit lacking, but at least they give you the option. You just hold down on the home screen and you're taken to the customization screen, pretty much like that. I like the widgets on the lock screen like the calendar, and it reminds me of Google's at a glance widget on the home screen of my S22. I do wish though that they would allow you to move the clock or the widgets around, because sometimes when you're trying to choose a wallpaper that has somebody's face on it, the widgets are technically blocking the person's face, and you're pretty much forced to either get rid of one or two of the widgets and hopefully that fixes the problem, or you have to pretty much get rid of all of them in order for the face to show. So generally what I am doing on my phone is essentially either eliminating the widgets or just choosing a wallpaper that doesn't have one, which is kind of unfortunate because on my Galaxy S22 Ultra that really wasn't a problem because I can move my clock down a little bit or my widgets can go on top of it, and it just gave me a little bit more freedom to make that choice or that decision. Features like the always on display for the iPhone are a little weird. This is one of the other things that Apple finally added for iOS users, and it seems like it doesn't quite work how I expected it to. Usually what it's supposed to do is put the phone in kind of into a low powered state so that way it's using less battery, and the only thing it shows is a clock and a few widgets that are coming your way. Other than that, it's not really supposed to show much, but on the iPhone, it kind of just shows everything, which kind of is unfortunate because I believe that it's kind of going to drain the battery a little bit more than usual. And I haven't really got a chance to test it all that much because I've only had it for a few days. But when I do expect to see probably some differences between using the always on display and not using the always on display, especially when it comes to the battery, or having that much of a drastic difference. On my Galaxy S22 Ultra, whether I had my always on display on or whether I had it off, I didn't really see too much of a difference. With this just dimmable screen, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more varied. There are also a lot of things that I really couldn't do on my Galaxy S22 Ultra that I can do on my iPhone, especially with the changes to iOS 16, like being able to edit my messages or delete them after they've already been sent, which is pretty cool because a lot of times I make mistakes when I'm typing on my text messages sometimes, and a lot of times I have to text again just to make that sentence or whatever I'm saying make more sense. And this time all I have to do is just hold on to the message, hit edit, delete what I wanted, what I didn't want to say, put what I wanted to say, and then end it and send it again, and it automatically switches. I know, although you can only do this to people who have other iPhones, which kind of seems weird in a sense, but at the same time, it's actually not that bad. I guess I just have to memorize that in some I'm using iMessage, and when I'm texting people with Android devices, I have to remember that I can't do that. So, I mean, it's fine, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. All right, so let's talk about the biggest change from the iPhone 13 Pro Max to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and that is the dynamic island. And I have to say, to be honest, I really didn't like it when I first saw it. I thought it was completely ridiculous, and I thought that it would probably be a better idea to just stick with the notch. It looked like it was just a big giant hole in the middle of the display, and that it was going to annoy the heck out of me if I ever got it. And I'm pretty much here to say that I was wrong. It actually doesn't really bother me all that much, and I think I actually like it a lot. So the apps that are compatible with the dynamic island are things like music and media apps like podcast or Apple Music or Spotify, the timer, maybe some system functions like screen mirroring, and phone calls. Using it to control media apps is awesome, and all I have to do is press and hold, and it's right there without ever having to leave the app I'm on. I know that technically that always existed, but this time it just eliminates that one extra step. Instead of having to go to the control center, swipe down from there, and then find the controls for the media, all I have to do is hold on the top of the display, and it's right there for me in about 1 second. You can switch between the different apps that are taking advantage of it as well. That leads me to the problem with it though. It kind of feels like there isn't a lot of support for it now, and the apps that I expected it to work with don't, like messages. Other than that though, I can definitely see the potential. They put a lot of use to a mostly inconvenient part of the screen, and I think it works. Oh, and I forgot to talk about the cameras. Throughout the video, I actually recorded the whole thing in 4K cinematic mode with a single stretch of video that is recorded with the 4K ProRes mode at 30 frames per second. I couldn't do the whole thing because those files are extremely large, but I think I managed to put a watermark on the right side of the video if you could notice it, and if you aren't able to spot it, I did put a timestamp in the description below for when I start using the 4K ProRes mode. I like to record my videos with my personal phone or whatever phone I'm testing at the time so I can get a good look at how it performs, and it helps to test that battery too. I'm really excited to test this phone a lot more And with everything I've used so far, it's been wonderful. So with all that done, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, I'll see you all when I do the video review.